Right, my darlings, so the new episode of Doctor Who has just been played tonight and I really enjoyed it. I genuinely enjoyed it. I was kind of hesitant about this new episode because we've got such a new change from what we had previously, not just in cast but also the writer's been changed up. So I didn't think it was going to be bad, but I was just a bit cautious on how much is going to be changed because we've had Stephen Moffat for about like 8 years now, so I was kind of thinking, and I liked Stephen Moffat, I'd gotten used to his style, so I was sort of thinking, how's this going to be changed? But I honestly thought that they did a really good job with this. I think that they took some new changes, and it was definitely different from what we're used to, but it really worked, and it definitely harkened back more to some of the older episodes a bit more, whilst adding some new stuff of their own. But of course, I'm just going to do a quick vlog about what I thought about it here. So before we get on to story and cast, let's just talk about how it's been changed on a sort of a grander sense, because of course now our new head writer is Chris Chibnall, who he has done work on Doctor Who before, as well as Torchwood and some other shows such as Broadchurch. And I'm not the biggest fan of his Doctor Who episodes. He has done some good ones, like Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, that was a good one. Day One in Torchwood, that was a good episode, even though considering what was in that episode, I was feeling a bit cautious about how his first outing is going to be with a female doctor, but besides the point there, those were good. And yeah, it's kind of ironic because he does tend to sort of lean towards the fantastic in some of his setups for the episodes, but he chose to take the series in a direction that's a lot more down-to-earth and a lot more basic compared to what we had with Moffat. And in rewatching some of his episodes, particularly Day One, you can kind of tell that he does have his strength in a kind of sense of, you know, this sort of down-to-earth, quaint, homespun kind of thing. The stuff that's very relatable to the everyday people. And the fact that it's now set in Sheffield rather than it being in London like Doctor Who normally is, it really works in that regard, I think. In terms of the cinematography, the ironic thing is that despite his very home, down-to-life kind of style, he's gone for a style that's a lot more cinematic than it was previously. Moffat, I won't go into the Russell T Davies era in terms of cinematography because they still had a limited budget, so they just had to work with what they have. But as the Moffat era went on, you could see that he was kind of going for a style that was very much sort of like 2000 sci-fi. So it kind of made me think of like the later Star Trek series, Babylon 5, Firefly, that kind of thing. It got slightly more cinematic near the end, but you could tell that he was using cameras and videography effects that seemed very TV-ish. Here it feels a lot more theatrical, and I thought that it was clashing a little bit with the style of writing that Chibnall tried to go through, but it's not like that he tried to add too much flashy stuff. There were a few lens flares in there, but it kind of worked, and it did kind of harken to the idea of the new dramas that BBC have got. So maybe it wasn't Chibnall's idea, maybe the BBC made him do it to have it match with the other dramas that they're promoting at the moment. And I thought the story and the writing was very good in this episode as well. It's just sort of like it's a typical regeneration story. The Doctor's stranded without a TARDIS or her sonic screwdriver, and she's got a mystery to solve, and she has to do it with people she's just met. It's basic regeneration stuff, but it works, and there are a couple of new elements that they've added in here, but it's basically just the same story we've seen again, just retold, but in a slightly new way. And even though, you know, they didn't quite add as much amazingly new stuff, it is nice to see this classic kind of setup, and it worked well. Plus, the new setting does give us a kind of new environment, because Sheffield, I've not really been to Sheffield, but I've been up north. I've been to places like Manchester and so forth. So I know the kind of environment that they're going for. They're kind of trying to go for this very quaint, closely knit environment where it's full of very friendly and down-to-earth people. And I think it works for Doctor Who, particularly the kind of Doctor that we have this time around does seem to fit more with that environment. So I think it was a good choice. But speaking of which, there's a part about this series that everybody has been discussing before the series even came out. Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor, and in all honesty, I really liked her. Yeah, I thought she did a really good Doctor. I wasn't one of the people who was kind of cautious or against the idea of a female Doctor. For me, the reason why I was a bit cautious about it was just in how they were going to do it. I was okay with the idea of a female Doctor, I was just wondering how they were going to do it. But this actually, I think she did a really good job, and it doesn't seem like she's trying to point too much attention about her being a woman. She just seems like the Doctor. For some people, there are Doctors that they have trouble getting used to. For some people, it was like that for Matt Smith. For some people, it was like that with Peter Capaldi. But with Jodie Whittaker, I loved her from the first few bits of dialogue she started speaking. You can just tell that she has so much enjoyment being there on the set, and that really conveys through her character, and it really works. She's a lot more excitable compared to previous Doctors, and just seems to have such a great passion while she's doing what she's doing. She kind of has this... Okay, so I was watching this with my parents, and my mum said that she reminds her of when a woman goes through the menopause and gets a bit ditzy. It's a bit of an odd comparison, and considering that my mum knows more about that than I do, I'll have to take her word for it. But I can kind of see what she's talking about. She does sort of feel like a woman who's kind of gotten older, but has still got that childlike sense of innocence to her, which is a very endearing quality. And yeah, I really like her, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of what she does in the following series. And of course, we've got the new companions, Ryan and Yasmin, played by Toysin Cole and Mandip Gill. They did pretty well. I think that they're going to need some more time to kind of show off their skills. They just kind of seem to me sort of like your average, everyday young people. And it works, and they're definitely relatable, and they both do very good jobs with their performances, but yeah, there's not doing too much that makes them really stand out at the moment. The people who do really stand out in this episode, though, are Sharon D. Grace and Bradley Walsh. They are fantastic, especially Bradley Walsh. I'm a big fan of his acting work, and this is technically the second time he's been in Doctor Who. He was in the spin-off Sarah Jane Adventures playing the awesomely terrifying Odd Bob the Clown, and while I was a bit disappointed with the kind of character he's playing, he's sort of playing the very basic, down-to-earth, oh, aliens don't exist, I don't believe this kind of character. But it's more downplayed than it has been in previous Doctor Who episodes with this kind of character. And the actual character he plays is fine, despite the fact that I was hoping for him to be a little bit more excitable or jubilant, but it works, and his performance is amazing. He's very good, very subtle, and near the end he gives an absolutely heartbreaking performance. It is absolutely amazing. I'm really looking forward to seeing more of him. And Sharon D. Grace does a great job as well. She plays the grandma to Mandip's character, and she's very good. She's basically this sort of younger, still very feisty, older person who's just been remarried to Bradley Walsh's character. And it really works. They have good chemistry together, those two. And she's a very likeable character. And I also really like the character who's been chased by the bad guy in this episode. I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but the reason why I like him is because he reminds me a lot of Luke, that guy I did the Farthingwood crossover with a few years ago. The way he speaks and his kind of dialogue and accent, and even the way he looks, is a lot like Luke. And apparently Luke has just been in a movie that's getting its premiere in a few weeks, so I get the feeling that he's feeling a bit screwed over with the fact that he probably may have had the chance to play this character in Doctor Who, and he hasn't been able to get the chance, so... Unlucky, Luke. Maybe you might get a better chance next time. As for the villain this time around, I've got to be honest, he was really, really dull. There wasn't much about him that made him very captivating. And to be fair, that's kind of common with regeneration stories. The Atraxi from 11th Hour were a bit boring. The Sycorax from the Christmas Invasion, they were a bit stock. But they had elements about them that made them kind of interesting. I think the ironic thing is that Jodie Whittaker's comment on this guy's name is going to be the thing that everyone ends up remembering about this character. Though the thing that I'm always going to remember is how his ship looks like a giant Hershey's Kiss. I'm sure it wasn't deliberately designed to be like that, but it's all I saw every time I saw it. I could not stop saying, oh look, it's a giant Hershey's Kiss. It's going to be the thing I always remember, and I really hope that becomes a meme or something. But yeah, a bit dull, but typically regeneration episode enemies are always a bit dull. It's not normally until the series progresses until we get some really good villains. But that's really my only complaint. I thought this was a very, very good starter for the series. I much preferred it more than last year's series starter. I did like last series, but I thought that the starting episode was a bit weak. And if I'm honest, a lot of the starting episodes of the past few series have been a little bit weak. Normally ones where a new writer is first introduced is normally some of the best ones, like 11th Hour by Stephen Moffat. That was a really good introductory episode. Rose, that was also quite a good episode, though I kind of consider sort of like the true inauguration of Russell T Davies to be the Christmas Invasion. I think that's the one where he really started getting into the meat of his writing style. But yeah, really enjoyed this episode of this new series. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what's coming next, and hopefully, like last year, once the series being brought to an end, I will do sort of a full recap of all the episodes of the series that has just been. But until then, I'll see you next time. Bye.